Hi, everyone. Good evening. Happy Tuesday. Welcome to our Life of a Mentee panel here hosted by Stemette. So my name is Anne-Marie Maffedon. I'm head Stemette and CEO at the Stemettes organization and charity Stemette Futures. And I'm excited about our session that we're having tonight. It's our very first one of its type. We have alumni speaking on our stage all the time and joining us at events. But this is a special event we've put on as part of some thought leadership that we're doing this year, but also as part of kind of opening up one of our big programs that we have at the Stemettes, which we've been partnering with Deutsche Bank on for a number of years now, since 2014, which is our Student to Stemette More Than Mentoring program. And this is a program that we've had hundreds of young women and young non-binary people come through over the last couple of years. And in the last year, this crazy year that we just had, that we're thankful is now ended, we had our biggest cohort yet. And in this year, 2021, we're going to have even more spaces for even more young people to get one-on-one personalized support from women and non-binary people across the STEM sector, working in the science, technology, engineering, and maths related jobs and fields. So I'm really, really excited. And thank you very much to those of you who are joining us today. Shout out to the folks on YouTube, a quick hi to the folks from Twitter. I think this is also going out on Facebook. So hey to you all. And so thank you very much for tuning in. You'll be able to watch back the recording on the platform that you've tuned in from as well. So if anything kind of flies past too quickly, or you miss it, or you want to hear it again, don't worry, it has been recorded. You've also got able to kind of contribute and kind of comment as we're doing things in the comments panel. So depending on which platform you're on, it's kind of there, or I don't think it'll be there, but you can pop your comments in, and our host tonight, this evening's host, will also be able to see them in there. Please, this is a family-friendly environment. We're all here being very supportive, but please do make sure that you keep it clean in the comments as well and keep it supportive. So I'm really excited to have you all here. This is a fantastic program to be a part of, from the mentoring side as well as from the mentee side. And so today you'll be hearing from folks that have been involved in this program over the last couple of years, have had their highs, have had their lows, and are now doing things as a result of what's happened for them on the program. You've got someone who was a former mentee who's now become a mentor on the program. You've got others who have gone through various different career paths, not just the traditional one, but have gone through different ones. So I'm really, really hoping that everyone will be able to take something away from the session today, whether it's you wanting to be a mentor or you having been mentored, but even just career advice and kind of learning from the experiences of these young women, these young people, and our role models that we've got joining us today. If I can get the next slide. So just as a recap, the Student to Stemette program is run by us at Stemettes here. We've been hosting it in partnership with Deutsche Bank. It's a series of one-on-one mentoring sessions between a young woman or a young non-binary person, age 15 and above, and a role model in industry. And there's a package of support around that as well via things like the Stemette Society and the other programs that we run. You'll meet twice a month on the program for about an hour and get to work through things like building your professional network, your interview skills, your networking skills, cover letters, and exploring future education paths. We've also got lots of networking, which didn't stop because of the pandemic. Corona will not stop us with all of this. We are going to make it to our destination and to fulfill our potential. So without further ado, I know we've got the agenda here. I've got 1 minute left before I hand over to your main host for this event this evening. A quick rundown of how it's going to operate. So in a minute, your host will take over. She will introduce you to the panelists that we've got, and that will run until 5:25. Then at about 5:25, we'll head over to our questions. So we've got some of our own questions that we've got prepared just to give you a flavor of what it is to be a mentee on the Student to Stemette program and a little bit of what it is to be a mentor. Then we will be taking questions from you in the comments. So I'm going to click across and see, here we go. We've got some hi daughters watching via YouTube as well. So hi folks. Oh, the comments are switched off on YouTube. Apologies. There you go, YouTubers. And then at 8, at 6:25, sorry, we'll be closing with our calls to action and what to do as a result of tuning into today's session. We'll also be taking feedback, and either myself or Holly, your host, will be closing. So if we can get to the next slide, I'd like to introduce you to your host for the rest of the evening. This is Holly. Holly is at Her Hello World on Instagram. She's a Microsoft software engineer too, and a D&I advocate. She has been a mentee. She has been a mentor on the Student Stemette program. And so over to you, host Holly. It's like Eurovision. Can you hear me, Holly? Can you hear me?
How's it going?
How's it going? I'm loving the color that I like your branding is so strong that you've got the same color in your image and in your video feed. So thank you very much, Holly.
And everything.
Yeah, you do. So yeah, over to you, Holly. Thank you very much.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you very much, Anne-Marie. So like she mentioned, I'm Holly. I'm a Microsoft software engineer too on the Cortana and Windows team based out of London. I was a Stemettes mentee back in 2016, 2017 during my placement year at university, and was very thankful to also then be able to pay it forward and be a mentor to my very own mentee in the 2019-2020 year. I'm super excited to be here hosting today this Life of a Stemettes Mentee panel, because we have Akweya, Yushi, Apoorva, Sanjana, and Becky as our awesome panelists who have joined the program and are now successfully pursuing their careers in STEM. Just to sort of reiterate what Anne-Marie already mentioned, the Stemettes program is a virtual mentorship program for 15 to 25-year-olds, which Deutsche Bank has been supporting since 2014. If you want to increase your peer-to-peer network and hear more about the program, be sure to join the Stemettes Society and read articles on the Stemettes zine. Right, so let's go to the next slide, and so we can meet our first panelist. I should say before we properly get started, feel free again to ask questions and react to what the panelists are saying as we chat, and I'll try to get them answered as we go. So let's start with Becky. Becky, can you tell us a little bit more about what you do in STEM? And of course, because this is a Stemettes event, we always love food-related questions. So can you also tell us what your favorite chocolate is?
Right now in STEM, I'm currently studying computer science at university. I'm in my second year, so trying to get to the end of this degree, just claw our way to the end. My favorite chocolate, I would say, I think Galaxy, nice and smooth.
I mean, it's pretty unbeatable, really, isn't it? That's amazing. All right, so we'll go on to our next panelist, which is Ayushi. Can you tell us a little bit about your place in STEM and your favorite chocolate as well?
Hello, my name is Ayushi and I am an apprentice. I do computer science and I'm also on the software engineering scheme at KPMG. And my favorite chocolate, I really love mint chocolate, so I think Aero has to be my favorite.
I mean, growing up, that was always my favorite as well. You can't really beat the bubbles. That's awesome. All right, now we have Akweya. Can you tell us a little bit about you and your favorite chocolate as well?
Cool. Hi, everyone. My name is Akweya. I am a cloud solution architect at Microsoft, and my favorite chocolate, I think, is Milky Way. I think.
Options. Awesome. All right, and we also have Sanjana. Can you tell us a little bit about you?
Hi, I'm Sanjana, and I'm a student, and I'm currently doing my A-levels in London, and I'm really interested in computer science and tech. And my favorite chocolate, okay, this is very controversial, but it has to be Bounty.
Dang, I was gonna say that I hear that is fairly controversial. Yeah. I find it pretty good though. We're one of the few. All right, and finally we have Apoorva. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself and your favorite chocolate?
Hello, I'm Apoorva. So I'm a final year computer science student at the University of Birmingham. About to step into a real life world very soon, and that's making me quite nervous. But yeah, in terms of chocolate, I would say Lind's dark chocolate with sea salt. I quite like the sea salt, and everyone's like, that's not supposed to be in the chocolate, but I just love it.
So good. I mean, especially when it's caramel salted chocolate as well. It's pretty unbeatable. I was going to say, so we have a great set of panelists across a bunch of different stages of their career. So some of them are at the beginning, some of them are working currently. So it should be a really, really interesting conversation to have. So this is the whole panel. I wanted to actually start off with Sanjana, because you're sort of maybe one of the younger people in this group, but have also been through the program. So you said you were doing your A-levels, and I'm sure many of us are interested to hear about your experiences. So I was wondering if you could tell us what the most valuable piece of advice is that you've been given, and how the program itself, the Stemettes program itself, influenced your path.
So I think I joined the Stemette Society like a year ago, roughly like January last year. And I think I joined it because I heard about the Student to STEM mentorship program. So I think that was like definitely a really good choice. And I think one of the main pieces of advice that really stuck with me was one from my mentor, who is her name's Helen. She's from Deutsche Bank, and she basically, when we were sort of looking at our CV kind of stuff, and we were sort of, trying to build a better career profile, she told me to not be afraid to sell myself. And I feel like a lot of women in the industry as well, they tend to try and match every sort of requirement needed for a job, and apparently men for the same job will apply even if they just match 60%, whereas women need to like match 100% before they apply. So I think one of the main things she told me was to just be more confident in yourself and go for things even when you feel a little bit of imposter syndrome.
Yeah, especially in this industry, you do have to be a little bit bold, don't you? And I've even heard things where they'll put the job description even higher, just so that you then, like, they might get people that are higher, but that's by no means the actual limits, like the actual requirements. So you do have to feel the extra bit of boldness and confidence, don't you? That's great. I was going to say, so you mentioned in your intro before that you were doing quite a few STEM A-levels at the moment. It's quite an interesting cross-section between all the different STEM subjects. And so I'm kind of curious, like, what made you choose those? And as you kind of move in towards maybe you're like going to university or whatever your next steps after your A-level are, like, how do you think those particular set of courses are going to help you? You might need to remind us what they all are.
So I took maths, further maths, physics, and economics. And I think what first got me into STEM was, I think when I was 13, I joined an all-girls robotics team, and I completely like fell in love with the sort of building, programming, and driving. And what really I think got me excited with like the competitions, but I felt like I definitely wanted more of that. So then I took computer science when I was around 15 or 16, and I thought, okay, wow, computer science is definitely very cool and definitely something I want to pursue. So, and I anyway did really like math and science and stuff, but I just didn't know where I wanted to go. And I feel like computer science wasn't such a huge deal, especially since I went to an all-girls school, so the class size for computer science was like really small. So when I realized that I did want to do computer science, I saw the kind of subjects that were probably going to be most helpful, and most unis I know require sort of maths and further maths. So I was like, okay, let me take that. I took physics because there was quite a lot of overlap, and I think it fit really well with the other ones. And then because all three of those were really abstract, I guess I wanted something more, I guess, tangible and sort of real lifey. So I took econ, which is, I think, a bit more, less abstract than the rest of them. Yeah.
A bit of applied maths with that one, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, they all have math.
Yeah, yeah, they do. Very true. I was going to say, I think it's interesting as well, because when I was looking at your subjects, it's like the economics and the physics, and a lot of the people who I studied with at university who did those subjects full time also just end up needing to learn to program regardless. And so it's kind of like the programming is the tool that helps you accomplish those goals with the economics and stuff like that, and the physics. And I think it's great. I think you're definitely on the right track. Becky, I wanted to go over to you now because you are doing your second year at university at the moment, which is a really big year because you're also applying for placements.
Yeah.
I'm curious, like, what has the last 6 months really taught you about yourself and career-wise in this big year of change?
I think the last 6 months have taught me your plans don't always work out the way you want. I think it's been really great for growing and learning a lot more about myself and my strengths and my weaknesses. For example, going through so many interviews and online applications, and I think just being resilient through it all, and just keeping the faith and the hope that it will work out. And I think it's helped me a lot in, I think, opening a path for me into the career I would like to go into. Sorry, because I think it's helped me really assess what I want to do. I think before I had quite a one-track mind of probably software engineering, whereas now I'm opening up into different avenues, for example, technology consulting, and different technology roles. And I think, yeah, it's allowed me to learn more about myself and my interests.
Yeah, it is really interesting. I feel like when you're in university or stuff like that, you don't often necessarily hear about all these individual roles.
Yeah.
And it's not only until you start actually looking up the job descriptions, just how much variety you can get with a computer science degree. And exactly to your point as well about things don't always work to plan. I think we've all had more injections before. We've all ended up kind of changing our path. It's a journey.
Yeah,
I just want to remind everybody that you can also submit your own questions in the comments, and we'll get to them as we go through as well. I wanted to actually jump over to Apoorva to talk to you about your experiences as a final year student who's studying. You're doing AI and computer science, is that right? Yeah?
Yeah, that's right. So before that, even I did a placement.
Because I wanted to...
Sorry.
Yeah. I just basically wanted... No, my computer is really slow. I basically just wanted, because you basically were doing a AI and computer science undergrad, and you did an internship with IBM, which is one of the big OG tech companies, big names right there. And I basically just wanted to hear a bit more about kind of what interests you in technology and your career highlights.
Yeah, so as you said, I am doing an AI degree. So when I applied for my placement, I was supposed to do something related to AI at IBM, but it turned out that things changed at the last minute. They had a team restructuring, and I actually ended up in a software engineering team doing cloud infrastructure. And I was in denial at the beginning. I was like, no, this can't be happening to me. I don't want to do this. Get me out of here. But eventually I learned it, and I started quite enjoying it. So now I'm applying for graduate jobs, and I'm about to finalize a software engineering role. So that was that escalated quickly from not wanting to do software engineering to wanting to do it for the rest of my life. And yeah, so one thing that I learned from that experience was keep your mind open. You never know what you may or may not like. Because, as you said, at university, whatever we are taught or whatever we go through is really condensed, It's hard to gauge if you would really like it in the four walls of your lab or of your lecture hall. So keep your mind open. And I am not going back to IBM because I just felt like I'm much more suited for a company or a firm which is smaller. So I'm quite shy when it comes to talking about the work that I've been doing. And I had a really detailed discussion with my mentor. She's the one actually who helped me pick what I want to do next. And we realized that I would be so much more comfortable in an environment which doesn't have a lot of people. So yeah, that's why I'm not going back. And also my mentor is the one who actually helped me take that decision, because I was like, am I overthinking this? IBM is a huge name, especially because I'm an international student from India. And in India, IBM is the thing. And everyone around me was like, you need visa sponsorship. Brexit is coming. You're in the middle of a pandemic. You really don't want to give up on that offer and try to look for something else in these circumstances. And my mentor was so supportive, and she was like, if you're not happy, it's nothing wrong to just take a step back and reevaluate your life. And I think if it wouldn't have been for my mentor, I wouldn't have had the courage to just go out there and say, sorry, I'm not coming back. It's not you, it's me.
I think that's great. Honestly, I feel like that is I think there's two things there. It really shows the value of an internship and these placement years to help prove out exactly kind of like what you're interested in, what works for you, and also importantly, like what doesn't work for you. Like, I think those are sometimes the things that you really take away, and if you don't have the experience to know or have tried cloud or working in a big company, you would never have figured these things out unless it's like too late. And I think that's another great thing that you had mentioned with your mentor, the fact that they were able to kind of encourage you and support you on getting on the path that you wanted to do, taking into account who you are. Like, not all of us need to go work at IBM. I think there's so much value working at a smaller company or in software engineering or in a startup or whatever it might be. I think that's really great that you had someone who actually really understood you and getting you to the path where you're now getting your offer, right? You said you have a new software engineering role. Yeah, amazing. Like, so good. Fantastic. That's great. I wanted to jump over to Akweya now, because you actually are now in a cloud solution role at Microsoft. And you took a little bit of a different approach than Becky and Apurva, who have gone through like a classic out of like, I guess, I'm assuming out of A-levels straight into university. You went down a path of doing like a boot camp, then you were a software engineer at List, and now you're working as a Microsoft degree apprentice as a cloud solution architect. And so I wanted to kind of hear a little bit about like what your role actually is, because again, we've already heard that a lot of people don't really get much exposure to what these cloud solution roles are, and what your favorite part of the job is.
Cool. I'm still trying to figure out like what's the best way to explain my role, because there's like so many different aspects to it. But essentially, it's like a technical consultant / advisor. So we work with customers who have purchased our cloud solution services, Azure. So we help them to use it if they want to upskill and like venture into new areas, and say like they want to do a bit more machine learning or AI. We help them to like provide the workshops and stuff like that to basically upskill them and make sure that they can understand what it is that they're getting into. So it's like a advisor sort of role. Yeah, it's cool. And what was the second question, sorry?
I asked you what your favorite part of the job was.
My favorite part is that each day is literally different. For instance, today, I've jumped from being in lectures, uni lectures, to then preparing for a customer workshop that I'm preparing tomorrow, and then to having like an event like this. So it literally is different all the time. And I really need that, because I can't just be doing one thing. I'll just switch and end up finding another thing to do. So yeah, it's just so different each day. I love it.
That's great. It definitely keeps things interesting, doesn't it? And like, I feel like there's a lot of ideas about the fact that like, oh, you work in tech, you're going to be sat at your desk all the time doing the same stuff. And it's just not true. Even from like my software engineering role, like I do loads of different things each day. Each day is a bit different, and it keeps things really interesting. I wanted to also hear from Ayushi, because you are also a degree apprentice, but you're working at KPMG as a software engineer for the last couple of years. And so I wanted to kind of dive down into exactly like what is a degree apprentice, why you decided to go down that path, and if you have any kind of advice for someone who's also interested in doing that.
Yep, so let me start off with telling you what a degree apprenticeship is. So it's basically a way to get your degree and be a uni student, and also be able to work at the same time. So currently my course, I get to go to university for 2 days, or now it's online, and then the other 3 days I get to work as part of my team and pick up tickets and do any development work that is available for me to do. And yeah, I really enjoy it, because it just makes my week different, and like Akweya said, it's just something different to get me going, because I kind of will get demotivated if I'm stuck doing the same thing. So every day is like different like that. Yeah.
And I was also wondering if you had any advice for someone who wanted to go down a similar path as you.
Yep, so I think with degree apprenticeships, there's just like so much on offer. So if you really do your research and you don't necessarily know what you want to do, but just having that passion, it goes a long way. So I think if you're considering it, just go for it. Yeah, you just need the passion.
Yeah, that's great. I think it's definitely something that we'll see increasing over time. Like I've been seeing a lot more big companies and even small companies starting to offer these degree apprenticeships, and they're very cool. Like as you mentioned, like you get a degree, you get paid for it, you don't end up going in student debt. You basically have all of this practical experience, and then you're almost guaranteed a job in the end. It's kind of this like massive win-win-win-win-win situation that makes me wonder why it's not more like why I didn't do one, to be honest, and why it's not more popular. That's great. I just wanted to say a quick hello to everybody who's been joining. It's great to see you there. I'm reading some of these comments. I'll read this one out from Isabella. It says, like, I agree with what Sanjana says about girls in computer science. I also go to a girls' school and don't have the chance to do computer science because of a lack of interest. I think that seems to be a sentiment that, at least in my time being in England, that I've heard quite often, is a lot of girls in girls' schools don't really have the computer science classes that a lot of the boys' schools do. I know some of the friends that I grew up with ended up having to go to boys' schools just so they could take their computer science classes because they weren't offered at theirs. That's great. Welcome, everybody. If you have any questions, please do submit them so we can get them answered as we go. I see another question that's come in from Summer. Thanks for sending that in. I guess we could just go around the room. We can start off with Becky. What does it mean for you to be a woman in STEM?
I think being a woman in STEM is essentially breaking boundaries that weren't being explored before. I think also being a woman of color in STEM as well, it's I think really creating a space for myself and women like me in STEM and in these careers. And I think showing how far you can go and different opportunities you have, for example, with Stemettes and the mentorship program, and where that can lead, for example, applying to different companies that some people wouldn't have ever thought of. And I think just opening a network of women in STEM and exposing them to like, this is what you can be. So I think definitely that's what I would say being a woman in STEM is for me.
So Ayushi, do you have any thoughts to add?
Yep, so it's definitely like breaking the stereotype so that we can empower the next generation to get into STEM. Because with us women, as we saw in the past, there wasn't a lot of us in STEM. So we're seeing the gender gap closing, and hopefully like in the future, it will just be 50-50 and like everything, opportunities will be equal, and young girls, they'll feel empowered to go into STEM. I think, yeah, that's what it feels like.
You know, we're making our way there. Hopefully we hit that 50-50 soon. It seems like that really makes a difference, right? It's all this incremental change that builds up to something quite monumental. Apoorva, do you have anything to add? I'd love to hear your thoughts.
You know, as Ayushi said, it's about breaking stereotypes. For example, I had this probably subconscious image of someone successful in STEM when I started working. And at the beginning of this mentorship program, you do this personality test sort of thing, which kind of tells you how you take decisions and everything. And mine came out to be 97% feeling and 3% thinking. And I was kind of sad after looking at it. And I still remember before a meeting with the mentor where we were going to discuss those results, I was actually expecting her to say, oh no, this is really bad and we need to work on this, we need to change it. And looking back now, I know that sounds silly, but then I thought something was really wrong with me and maybe I wasn't suited for this industry. But then she taught me that it's fine, you know, just actually not being around 50-60% for something just means you have a very strong personality trait, and that could be your unique selling point. So just because you take your decisions based more on feelings, makes you more empathetic, and actually makes you more suited to lead teams rather than someone who's constantly just basing their decisions on logic. So it's things like that. Like when you're just starting out in your career, you feel something is wrong with you instead of questioning what has been the normal about the industry. And as a woman, like when a new girl comes into the industry, I would want to be that example that it's not bad to base your decisions on feelings. There's nothing wrong or right here. It's just individualistic outlook towards life.
Yeah, I think that's again, your mentor sounds great. She sounds like she's a really good advice, and I totally agree with her. I think when you look at things like that, it's what defines you. It helps differentiate you. It's what brings these different perspectives to the table, and also helps you if you're thinking with your feelings and how your experiences. It's also like paying attention to what the customer might be thinking as well, and what they might be going through. And so it's all of these things are strengths. We just need to view them as strengths and see the value in them instead of seeing them as, oh, someone else might not have this, or this is not what it's traditional, but it's like we're changing things. We're bringing something new into the industry better. Sanjana, I'd love to hear from you now. We're almost through our little loop.
I think what like being women in STEM is, I guess, just enjoying it. I feel like a lot of people, like Apurva said, like they have this image that you have to be super logical and rational, and often it's quite male, but I feel like people do forget that STEM is fun. Otherwise, like we would never have got into it in the first place. Like it's really enjoyable and really fun, and it's not all just, sitting behind a desk or, grinding away the hours, I don't know, leak coding. So it can be really fun and really enjoyable, and I think that's what being in STEM means.
That's fantastic. Akoya, I can see you on the unmute button. You're ready to go.
Yep, I'm ready. I'll say being a woman in STEM means just reminding people that we already had a seat at the table and just taking that back. We're just showing up basically because, we were here first. Yeah.
I think that's great. I don't think it's something that's often very known that like women were some of the first computers. I think that's what they literally called us, and like the first programmers and the first people who were defining the industry. And then things changed and men started to take over. But we really were right there at the forefront, and so kind of reclaiming our spaces, I think, is great. I actually wanted to go back to you to kind of continue on this kind of thread. This is great. You also run Anomaly's Views and have done quite a lot of work with women in tech. And so I'm curious, especially like what do you want your impact to be on like today's world and the future, whether that's like with your involvement in your like technical contributions at work or in your kind of like great outreach stuff that you're doing with the community?
Oh, that's a big question. I think my impact, I want people to just know that like everything is possible, because if you look back at my journey, it doesn't make any sense. Like I've jumped from here to there because I never really knew what I wanted to do. I was kind of winging it, but somehow, I'm here at one of like the biggest company in the world. So it's just to be that kind of example and just show people that literally everything is possible. Like don't hold yourself back. Just try. Obviously, you have a bit of downfalls and failures, but it's all part of the journey. So I just want to try and encourage as much people as I can through just sharing my journey and story that, it's possible. You can get there.
That's great. It is so powerful, isn't it? Especially when there aren't very many role models sharing your story and being present. And it starts paving the way for other people. Apurva, you're also quite involved in the women in STEM community. I was going to say here in London, you've done Code for Us Girls stuff. I'm curious from your perspective, like how do you think the STEM industries and even maybe the world would change due to the fact that we're hopefully like getting more women in STEM?
I think, the typical example that we have heard of often when first Siri started on the iPhones, she couldn't recognize female voices and she couldn't take in those commands. Like, that's the sort of thing that we can avoid when you have more women at the table, because when it's just men building products, they completely forget that there's something there. They are not the normal. They are not the only users of the product. And there's other things that they need to take into consideration, because there's literally 50% of the demographic that they are just not taking into consideration. So I feel like the more women we bring into this industry, the more inclusive and accessible our products are going to be.
It really is about kind of like building with everyone in mind. You have to have everyone actually in the decision-making room. I'm not sure if any of you guys have read Invisible Women before, but that's a super good book if you haven't already read it. It's all about like basically gaps in the data where women should be and kind of the impacts of when you start considering women and their contributions and how they live, just how much good happens in the world and how many different facets of life get impacted by it. It's a super interesting book if you haven't already read it. I wanted to go to some of the questions that we have coming in because we have a few more about actually like being in a relationship with your the mentorship relationship, I should say. So let me ask this one here. It goes, what is the relationship like between a mentor and a mentee? Can you talk about things that are not necessarily STEM related? Is there anyone who wants to answer this? I know you've all been through the program. Yes, Anjana?
Yeah, so I think my mentor, when I first started, I guess I was one of the younger mentees. So I was like, I don't know incredibly too much about STEM just as of yet. So I was a bit scared at first. I was also like, ooh, she's only going to want to talk about STEM. I don't know that much. I'm not going to seem, as smart as all the other mentees. But I think one thing is that the Stemette people call it a Sherpa, I guess, which is essentially sort of like a guide. And the thing is, they're kind of not just a STEM mentor, but I think they were, sounds very deep, but like a life mentor as well. And I know that Apurva sort of shares my sentiment and that they do sort of really deeply care about your personal life. And I guess that your career life and your personal life do intertwine a lot. And what happens in your personal life is going to affect your decisions in the STEM world and your career. So having someone to sort of guide your thought process and stuff personally as well as career-wise, I guess was really helpful. For example, my mentor Helen, so we would always sort of have our sort of by our calls twice a month, and we would talk about STEM, of course, and what we were going to do, but we would also talk about our families and what we were doing in lockdown to sort of get outside, and we would share book recommendations. And I guess more than a mentor, they were also a friend. So yeah, not just STEM, definitely not.
That's great. Do you still stay in touch with your mentor?
Oh yeah, we do talk. Yeah, it's pretty good.
That's great. It's I know, at least from being on my side of the table as well, I know with my mentee, it wasn't even necessarily that it was STEM related questions. We spoke a bit about technology things, but it's also just career. There's so many things that you can just help in a generic career, the CV and LinkedIn stuff, any interviews, applications, all of that is super generic, or maybe not generic, but you can apply it with so many different industries. And so regardless if it's you're just dealing with a STEM problem right now, or whether it's a career problem or a life thing, all of these things, you mentioned, are related. And these are what these people are kind of here for. Does anyone else want to answer about kind of what your relationship was like between your mentor and yourself? And if you spoke about things that were not necessarily STEM related?
Yeah, I can go. So we spoke mainly about my confidence because, before pursuing a career in STEM, I just kept on saying, I'm trying to do things. I'm trying to learn how to code. I'm trying to do this. But just from one conversation I had with her, she just basically said, stop saying you're trying, you're actually doing. So it wasn't necessarily related to STEM. It was more about our confidence. So yeah, it was amazing. It was impactful.
I think those are the things that stay with you, right? Especially with something like confidence. If you can boost your confidence in one area, then it just unlocks you for so many other things. Exactly. And we actually have a follow-up question. If you have a great interest in STEM, but want a career in a completely different area, are you eligible for the program? I don't see why you would not be. From my point of view, I guess maybe someone in the Stemettes might have to answer that particularly. Does anyone else have any thoughts about if you've actually, because we've all said that we've spoken about things that are not STEM related, so you might need to go over that with the actual Stemettes. Another question we have is, have you done an interview before, and what was it like? What advice would you have for someone going to do one? How many people here have done interviews? We have. Yeah. Shall I start with Ayushi?
Yep, so as part of my like apprenticeship applications, I'd done dozens. I had to do quite a few interviews, and I went in thinking I was quite nervous because I was like, oh, they're going to really judge me and they're going to put me on the spot, they're going to rip me apart. But when I walked in, it was like far from that. It turned more into a conversation, and it felt like I knew the person interviewing me, and we had such a friendly conversation. And I think from that, they kind of gauged my passion and for tech as well. And yeah, we kind of talked about other things as well. So it just made me realize like interviews aren't as scary as you think they are, because the interviewers, they're actually human, they're not robots. So yeah, it'll be fine.
That's great. I think it's always nice, especially, and that's honestly something that you're almost looking out for yourselves. Like, you're obviously being interviewed, but you're also interviewing this company, about how you interact and these kind of like do you guys just click as a personality? Do you have team fit here? I think is something worth like noticing and recognizing and paying attention to, because if they make you feel comfortable during your interview, they're probably going to be a great person to work for full time later, and that's kind of what you're trying to judge. Apurva, do you also have some thoughts, Dad? You said you've been interviewed as well for IBM. What was that like? And do you have any advice?
I think it's very important to not think about the right answer, because, you know, like everybody thinks when we have like situation judgment tests or strengths-based interviews, everyone is like, what is the right answer? And personally, I feel there is no right answer. Just be yourself, because even if you get picked after following someone's advice of saying you prefer something over something else, you are not going to enjoy your role. And I say this not lightly, because people feel once you get in, you can just get on with the flow. But if it's not a personality match, trust me, you're just going to feel suffocated throughout your internship or throughout your grad role, and that takes a toll on your mental health. Like, it's a domino effect, you know. It starts with you feeling like you don't belong there. Maybe you're too shy, or maybe you're too outgoing for the company's culture. And then it just you start questioning yourself, your life, and you just go into a downward spiral. So one top tip that I have for interviews is, please don't try to look for the right answer. Instead, just be yourself.
I think that's actually a really interesting point, and especially when a lot of these things, especially with like, I don't know, software engineering and like interviews, let me get my words right. A lot of it is about how you think and your thought processes and how you kind of try to solve problems. And it's not necessarily like, oh, did they figure out this problem? It's much more interesting to understand, I guess, who you are on a deeper level and understand the kind of how you think through these things through. And so as long as you're kind of communicating throughout your interview, then like that's kind of really the most that you can be doing. And Akoya, I was going to say, again, you're on it. You know I'm coming to you. Yeah. Tell me a bit about your interview experience.
I was going to say that to just add on to what everyone else has said, is to also own what you've done or what you have. I feel as if like it's really important to just have the mindset as in that I've done what I've done. How can I bring that across and just show people that, you know, I do have the passion. I may not necessarily have the skills yet, but I've, you know, attended this networking event. I've done some coding behind the scene. I've, you know, gone and got myself a mentor, because it all does count. But unfortunately, some people just think, oh, because I don't have X, Y, and Z experience, it means I'm not necessarily fit. Because when I was going through all of my interview processes, I didn't have like tons of experience, but I did a lot of things that showed that I was passionate, and that came across. So literally really own what you've done, because it's literally all you have to sell across. So really package that across in a really good way. And yeah, hopefully the doors will open for you.
I think that's great. I think it also like sort of exactly what you said about packaging these things and really mentioning the things that you've kind of owned and done. I think one of the things that I end up seeing is a lot of people just not really selling themselves maybe as well as they could be, like how you write things and how you kind of share what you've done and your impacts makes a big difference. Like you can write something one way and it doesn't sound very cool. You can write something another way and it's like suddenly like, wow, we need to get this person in. So it makes all the difference. Becky, did you come off mute to say something?
Yeah, I just wanted to add something. I think something that I would suggest to someone who's looking to be interviewed or going through the interview process, I think making use of your networks, for example, like LinkedIn, something as someone who's interviewing right now, I think going on LinkedIn, finding someone who's in the role you're looking to apply for and just asking them, for example, what was your interview experience like? Do you have any top tips? Even with that, you could probably create a connection. Maybe when you're at the interview, they could see your name and be like, oh, I remember that person. They message me on LinkedIn. I don't know, but I think it just gives you more of a view of what to expect and what to understand. Because, for example, when they give you the brief of like what is to happen in the interview, I don't think it's as comprehensive as it should be. So I just sit there like panicking and overthinking, like, are they going to ask me this? They're going to ask me that. But I think getting to know people on LinkedIn and like have those conversations about what to expect and how to prepare, I think are really good in making you more confident and like checking your nerves. So yeah, I think that's a great point.
Yeah, I agree. I think it also makes you just stand out more. If there's going to be a million people that come in with just a bunch of CVs and they only have a couple seconds to go through them, and so if they have that name recognition because you've reached out or you've gotten that internal referral or something, I think it definitely helps your chances. And it's kind of that step that a lot of people end up missing in the application process. I wanted to go back to a question that I had sort of brought up but didn't know the answer to. We have an official Stemettes response now. So this is the question where it's like, if you have a great interest in STEM but want a career in a different area completely, are you eligible for the program? What we've been told is that the Stemettes is a space for folks interested in STEM subjects and careers. You have to have an interest in exploring science, technology, engineering, and maths. To be a Stemettes mentee, you also then need to join the Stemettes Society. So generally, yes. We have some more questions coming in. This is great. Keep sending them in. I'm loving this. Let's take one from Olivia now. Do you have any advice on how to make the most of your time with your mentor? Did you prepare for each session? Does someone want to take this, or I can pick randomly? Let's start with Sanjana.
Hi. So I think what I did with my mentor, which seemed to work really well, is that we would not sort of map our time out, but what we would do is we would have goals. And I think it's really important to have goals that you want to like accomplish in a mentorship scheme. Otherwise, it's very hard to sort of map your progress, right? So we had sort of 3 or 4 things that what we wanted to like possibly achieve by the end of the whole sort of months of doing it. And we broke those down. So sort of each session, what we would do is we would talk about what we wanted to discuss, what I wanted help on, and then we would do what we needed to do. And we would have a little bit of time at the end to just sort of chill, talk about personal stuff. And then we would say, okay, cool, we ticked off these things. And then next week, maybe in between our sessions, let's do this by ourselves. And then we can come back, reconvene, and then discuss what we found difficult, what we found easy, and then make new goals. So I think sort of setting goals is probably the best way to make the most of your time, because then you can really see the progress you made with your mentor. And I think Stemettes really helped because they would send you forms and stuff, and they would sort of catch up with you on how it's going, which definitely gave us a little nudge in the right direction.
Yeah, that's great. I'm going to just highlight quickly something you mentioned at the end, which is the Stemettes do have these meet guides, which are really helpful. So if you want to join the program and don't maybe know exactly what to do or what to do each week, it's really nice having some kind of guidance, because they're really good things to be doing at each time. And there is obviously that flexibility. Like if you want to do your own thing, talk about whatever, then it's sort of like up to you and your mentor. But at least there is kind of that guidance and that sort of like structure if you want it. Does anyone else want to share their experiences on how they made the most of their time with their mentor? Who else can I pick on? Yeah? Okay, great. Let's go with you, Apoorva.
I would say because Stemettes gives a rough structure about how the meetings should go, please don't be afraid to be honest with your mentor and say, I don't really need this. For example, we had 1 hour session on CVs, and no offense meant, but I had gotten through like at least initial CV screening for most of my placements. So I was like, you can take a quick look at it in 10 minutes. And I would really appreciate if we spend the rest of the time talking about how to navigate conversations with your manager, because that is something that I'm really struggling with right now, and I would appreciate help with that. So just be very crystal clear with your mentor and ensure that they know what you expect from them instead of just following whatever they have planned for you.
Definitely. I mean, it is your mentorship, right? So if there's something that's relevant to now, then definitely make the most of your time. Like, I think I was probably at maybe a similar time when I did my like mentorship as a mentee. And every single time I was like, okay, this is my first time dealing with a tough conversation with someone, or first time going through a performance review. And it was really nice having someone to kind of walk me through my first experiences working in industry. That's great. I feel like we should get one more response. Does anyone have any other suggestions? What about you, Becky?
Hi. I think sometimes it's also okay not to talk about STEM. I know, controversial, but I think sometimes just talking about yourself and your goals and how you're feeling was something that I took away from my mentorship. For example, we have sessions where we just kind of like map out my current where I'm at and where I would like to go and like how I would get there, and also just talk about how I was feeling, like how I was feeling about, for example, entering uni, because at the time I was planning on doing a gap year, and at the time I didn't feel prepared, or I didn't feel prepared to do university. So I think it was good speaking to her, because obviously she's gone through university, she's gone through applications, a job, and she's now in a role right now. So I think it was really good to get that insight on like just talking about my feelings about how I wanted to progress with my life, essentially, from someone who I think when you're speaking to, like, for example, your friends, your family, who already have like hopes and dreams they like for you. But I think it was good with the mentor, because I think you were more at the center of it and they cared more about like what you thought rather than their thoughts about it. So I think that was definitely one thing I would take away from it.
That's a really good point. And I feel like maybe something that it doesn't get brought up very much is the fact that everybody else potentially might have a little bit of an influence or a little bit of a bias towards what path you end up going down. So having someone who's like truly on your side is really nice to kind of, I guess, like validate what you're feeling and going through and the next steps that you're wanting to take. I think that's great. Thank you, Becky. I am going to jump back to some of the questions that I had before. So feel free, please do keep bringing and posting these questions. These are great. I'm loving them. I think I've gone through most of the ones that have been submitted so far. So I'm going to jump back to these questions. And Becky, I actually wanted to speak to you a little bit more about your interests in tech. So like we've spoken a little bit about accessible tech, which is, I think, something that doesn't really maybe get brought up as often. And I'm kind of curious to see if you could tell us a bit more about it, maybe your interest in it, and if it's kind of maybe influenced your path at all.
I think accessible tech is something that I explored more at the Grace Hopper conference in 2019. I think there was a speech. There was a talk with a woman who was currently had like a company or an organization, I believe, working with accessible tech, because her brother actually had autism, and I think that struck a chord with me because my brother also has autism. So I think it was something where it was like, for example, she mentioned that when they gave her brother an iPad, seeing how he changed, and again with my brother, it was like seeing a change in his behavior when we gave him an iPad. He was able to like touch things and interact with things, and it was like his world was kind of opened up through technology. So I think then I really like took an interest in it. I was like, wow, okay, this is something that I'm not seeing enough of, and I think needs to be heard a bit more. So yeah, I think it's definitely something I'm taking interest in, and I would love for technology to be way more accessible than it is, because there's always room to grow. There's always experiences to learn from. So yeah, that's definitely my point.
It's an interesting one, and I think it's something like you said, it doesn't really get spoken about enough. Yeah. And I think again, when we're talking about bringing in these diverse perspectives and different, like bringing in these ideas and conversations about the products that are being built and how they're being built, it's like someone with this exposure or with this experience, or someone who's just thinking about it. Like sometimes people just don't think about it.
Definitely.
Makes these products so much better. Like I end up always telling the classic story about, like, I don't know, PowerPoint, their design ideas. Like that one, you can make beautiful PowerPoints in like one click. And that was created as an accessibility tool, which I'm sure I've already told you, Becky, because I think it's so cool. But it's these things where it's like, if we're building for everybody, it ends up that everybody wins. And I think that's such an important mention, especially in this group of like this community who are so driven, so involved, and really ready to make a difference. I think it's important to bring awareness to these different kind of aspects of tech where we could all be helping out.
And I agree with your point about everyone wins, because there are things that if not, people didn't, if it wasn't brought to, like for example, the PowerPoint point, that has helped so many other people to make, for example, better PowerPoints. And I think it just, as much as it helps those people with disabilities and with other difficulties or advantages that you could say, I think it also helps people who to do their things better as well. So I think that's definitely an important point.
Yeah, no, definitely. Awesome. Thank you for sharing your experiences. Ayushi, I wanted to jump over to you because I'm now picking up things that I remember from Grace Hopper. I know you are also quite interested in like cybersecurity and networking, right? And like went to a few talks during Grace Hopper about that. And so I wanted to kind of understand a bit more about why you kind of love that area of tech and kind of, again, how maybe Grace Hopper might have influenced your path or your learnings or stuff like that.
So with like cybersecurity, I've kind of always been interested because I watch these conspiracy theory YouTube videos, and sometimes I go into that loophole where people start talking about the dark web and like how people get hacked and like scammers and all of that. So then I was like, this is really interesting, but not from the point of being the malicious person trying to hack, but more from the side of protecting other users. So trying to get into the heads of these hackers and understand what they do and why they do it. So I think also looking at the damage that has been done by a lot of like attacks, like WannaCry on the NHS, for example, it's kind of made me realize how security isn't prioritized in industry sometimes. It's pushed to the side and it's just like, you know what, we'll deal with it after. So developers, like, they aren't considering security measures they can take. They just want to like get their code pushed out there and done, and they don't want to be like, you know what, maybe I should look at this and validate this so maybe in the future something doesn't happen. So I think in the Grace Hopper convention, I went to a lot of workshops and I heard a lot of keynote speakers talk about this and how security needs to be put back in the forefront and kind of prioritized. So there was also this workshop. I went to it with Becky actually, and we played a little game and we kind of saw the effects of what an attack can do to an organization. And it was really interesting to see how like big of a spiral effect it can have. So for example, if your office doesn't have the best security, like security guards, then that can spiral and people who are unauthorized can get in, steal data, like steal USB sticks and stuff like that. So it's just like, wow, there's so much in security. There's just so much. And I'm waiting for the day I can kind of just jump into it more.
Do you ever do any like side programming related to cybersecurity? I don't know what you could do with that.
I think I just watch videos, people doing it. Yeah. And I think there's also a platform, Immersive Labs. I think it's really good for university students, so they can learn about how to like keep things secure and how to emulate attacks and what like different types of attacks do, like SQL injections and stuff like that. So there's quite a lot of tools out there for learning about security.
Yeah, wow, that's a really cool one. I've not actually heard of that. I'll definitely have to check that out. I wanted to kind of open things up. Oh, you got a message. I'm going to read it to you. Olivia says, definitely agree about prioritizing cybersecurity. Secure by design is a passion of mine. Yes, secure by design. Thank you. She gets it. And immersive labs is great, as well as try hacking. Some good recommendations coming here. Thank you, Olivia. I have a question for all of you now, and I sort of have kind of mentioned it a little bit here and there and kind of touched on it, but I think it's a really important one to talk about specifically, especially because we're talking all about Students to Stemettes program and really like this big value add that's coming from these female mentors. And so I kind of want to go round robin again and basically ask you, like, would you say that having a mentor who is a woman in STEM really like helped you with your confidence or really helped you with your path? Like, was it, I guess specifically also like having a female mentor, non-binary mentor? Let's go reverse this time. Akoya, do you want to start?
Yep, 100%. My mentor was like the first woman in STEM woman in STEM that I first like got introduced to, and then just seeing her in a senior position in a really cool building, you know, just doing so many cool things I needed to have that insight to see that it was possible. So it's definitely such a big impact, and it's just important to have that.
Sanjana, do you want to share yours?
Yeah, I think, you know what I was saying before about sort of applying for a role if you're not too confident and stuff like that. I feel like having a female mentor will sort of guide you in a way that you will have to sort of see the tech world as a woman as well. And my mentor also has 2 daughters, so she also sort of would tell me about how she's encouraging her daughters to like get into STEM, and she'd like talk to me about how she like balanced her career and family and stuff like that. And I think having a female mentor definitely makes it easy to project yourself onto your mentor and take in their good qualities.
Mm-hmm. That's great. I think it's interesting because like, I think when there's sometimes these differences that we have to just recognize, even with like having a female mentor, is like they're going to have these different experiences that each of us are going to have experiences with as well. Like I think there's, at least in my own experience, I've had great value having male mentors, but there's just certain things that they'll just never understand or never really get, or like, and so to have that kind of really like big trust and confidence and like build that relationship with a female mentor has always been really valuable to me. And at least I always try to have at least one to get that kind of perspective. Purva, I'd like to hear from you. Like, do you think being a female mentor is in your career?
I think it was quite inspiring seeing my mentor. So she's a VP at Deutsche Bank, and she also has 2 sons, and she spends like half of the week in Newcastle with her family and the other half in London, which is like quite a distance away. But she was looking at her, I realized that I don't have to pick one. I can focus on my career as well as my family, and the work-life balance that she has managed to strike is something that I would want as well. And then it just becomes less daunting to know that it's not like after I get married, my career is going to, you know, take a back seat, but instead it's possible to balance everything.
Yeah, I think that's a good point, and maybe something that we don't really talk about, especially when we're like a little bit younger, is the fact that a lot of women end up taking on these caring roles. And so having someone that's been there, gone through that, understands what it's like, can help you plan for these things, or even just know what's available kind of in the industry, I think is really valuable, because it's something that a lot of us have to think about and figure out in our lives, and having someone to really speak to about that can make sure that we're kind of planning our careers properly around that. I think that's a really good point to mention. Ayushi, what do you think about having a women in STEM mentor?
I think for me, like, it's really important to have someone who can empathize with me. So she's been there and done that, and I look at her and she's such like a strong woman, and she's achieved so much. So to look at her and also hear about the similar struggles she faced, it just makes you think like, oh, like if she did it, then I can too. And it really gives you that boost of confidence that you need. And honestly, I think you connect with them much more. So I think, like people said before, it was more of like a friendship than a mentor-mentee relationship, and she's just absolutely brilliant. Yeah.
I think that's so nice. But, like, it is really built on trust, and I think the fact that you can say that you're friends with someone like that who's your mentor is a big deal, because it just really means to show that you've like built that really strong relationship and are gonna get the most out of that. That's amazing. Becky, finally, let's end with you. What are your thoughts?
I think having a female mentor is, I think, a really important step in my progression with my career in university and everything. I feel naturally more comfortable around women to begin with. So I think it was much more easy for me to talk about my concerns, my hopes, my dreams, and everything. And I think it also opened my eyes to, you don't have to be like this incredibly I mean, I think my idea of what a successful person looked like was changed by having a mentor. For example, I always thought if you wanted to, because I remember walking into her office and it was huge and glass and insane. I thought, wow, like she must have gone to like MIT and like done 1,001 different degrees. And I think it was just really reassuring to see someone who was normal, who went to university I was familiar with, had normal interests, for example, in sports, and had interests outside of work. And I think it was really comforting to know that I don't have to be this insanely like over, I don't know, like I don't have to achieve things that are so I don't know, I think things that I thought were necessary aren't completely necessary in creating a successful career. Like I don't have to go to MIT, I don't have to have built a mini computer at my home. Whereas I feel like with men, that was kind of like their points to show that they are successful. Like I remember doing computer science at A level. One of the men on my course was like, "Oh wow, I've built a computer when I was like 7." I was like, "Okay, so I'm a flop." So I think it was like comforting to see someone who hasn't done that and has still gotten so far with their career, and they're like, I'm not limited by my experiences, and there's so much opportunity for me to grow and to be better.
I think that's great. There are so many stereotypes about this industry. Like I think we all grew up with them, and being able to have these mentors and seeing what they went through and what they're going through even now, does really kind of help reset that image of what a software engineer is like, what someone who works just in generally in STEM, someone who's successful, like what that is again, similar to like how we only hear about like 4 different job roles. It's like there's so many ways to be successful. There's so many ways to be in STEM, so many different types of people who are in STEM. And these are kind of the things that these mentors really break down for us. We got a really interesting question, and I kind of love it. As women in STEM, I'm sure you'll agree that we can't leave men out of these discussions. How might we involve more men in gender equality discussions? I think this is a really, really important one, because we cannot do this alone. We have to work with other people, and there are so many great male allies out there. So I'd be really interested to kind of hear about some of your thoughts in relation to this question, so we can also help her out with her homework too. Let's start with you, Akoya, because you're in the industry. Do you have any experiences with this?
Yeah, you've literally just mentioned it briefly about having male allies that you can, as a starting point, people who care enough to just hear our voices and hear our experiences. So that would be like a good starting point, to just include allies, and then they can then obviously go back to their network and be that voice for us as well, where we're not there. So yeah.
Mm-hmm. That's great. I think it's there's definitely a strength that comes with how like men listen to men, right? So if they're telling them these things, then it's about like what women deserve or what experiences that we're going through. It's going to really resonate with everybody else who they tell. So that's great. I kind of want to hear actually from everybody on this one as well, because I think it's an interesting question. So Sanjana, do you have any thoughts?
I think definitely sort of having like those male allies and pushing the fact that if you do have male allies and they are sort of encouraging you to speak and not, I guess, treating you like you're not part of the team, as in there will be some men that definitely make the distinction that you're a woman and won't treat you the same as they would as the rest of the men in the team. I think definitely sort of bigging up the men that do treat you like you're on the team, because as you said, men do listen to other men, and if they do listen to these men that do agree that women are a valuable part of the team, then I guess their mindset can be changed, I guess. And also I do remember doing loads of sort of events with Stemettes, and there are men who like lead all these events, and it's really nice to see like men who are encouraged and passionate about helping young women get more interested in STEM as well.
That's great. And I've gotten a couple messages from the Stemettes just to kind of as a reminder that basically like they have loads of male volunteers doing like CV checks and interview practices and come to the networking events and provide experience opportunities. And so it's really great seeing how these people are getting involved and starting to really make this difference, and that they're a part of the Stemettes community just as we are. Apurva, I'd like to hear from you now. Because you've worked at IBM. What are your experiences?
I think it's less about discussions and more about actions. So it's the little things that matter, because I was talking to a friend who did an internship at some other firm, and both of us had like other male interns on our team, so we weren't the only interns. And I remember when the guy working with me on my team, he would specifically mention when somebody would just go, like, so what happened with this feature or something of that sort, he would say, it's not just me who's working on it, Apurva did this while I did this. And just being included in that conversation and not being left out. Like if there's someone else who is not taking your name, it's really nice to have somebody else in the team who reminds them that you still exist and you're contributing at a similar level. So I think it was very relieving to have him have my back all the time. And that was a really, really nice feelings, because then I felt like I wasn't alone. Even though it was a team of over 15 people and I was the only girl, I never felt like I was lonely or isolated in the team.
That's so good to hear. And the fact that someone is really kind of stepping up and making sure that you're getting the recognition and the credit that you deserve is fantastic. Like that's what we love to see. Amazing. I'm so glad to hear that. Ayushi, do you have any else? Oh, yeah, go on.
I just wanted to add that the best part was we never had a proper discussion around this. Like I never walked up to him and said, you should start mentioning my name or something. He just took the initiative. He noticed things and he wanted to make a change. And I think it's the little actions that add up, instead of someone just saying, okay, I'm going to organize a workshop on unconscious bias, for example. Yeah, that might help, might not help, but changing your own actions and trying to make your little difference goes a really long way.
The active allyship is what it is, isn't it? Everybody can do a training, but actually really showing it and living your allyship is super important. That's great. Ayushi, do you have any thoughts on this?
Yeah, so I think from what I've seen in my company so far, men, they really want there to be equality with women and men in the technology industry, because they understand the benefits it brings. Like, for example, more things being thought about in design phase and development phase, etc. So there's a really positive kind of view about it, and open discussions are encouraged. And there's also a lot of initiatives at our company, and so many men are volunteering and getting involved to also mentor as well as part of a mentorship scheme. So I feel like there's more people talking about it now compared to before, and it's not something that's like a taboo subject. It's quite talked about now.
Well, I would totally agree. I think there are people who are really stepping up. They've gotten that increased awareness, and now it's almost just figuring out how they can make that difference, and even just their everyday lives or when the opportunities present themselves. Becky, do you have any kind of experiences to add here or thoughts?
I think I agree with a lot of what everyone said. I think, again, men do listen to men. So I think it's important to address the stereotypes that they may have about women, and why they think, for example, if women shouldn't be in STEM, or what they think their roles, what they think women's role in STEM is, and address that and maybe expand their knowledge on that. Because I think it's very important to actually address their way of thinking. For example, some of these men have wives, have sisters, have daughters, and I think it would help open up their mindset. For example, if they have a daughter, they can encourage that daughter into computer science and STEM rather than some of the typical roles I think a lot of people push women into. For example, I think when I was in A levels, I think a lot of people were pushing me into medicine and like more not necessarily for like the technical aspects of like biology and chemistry, but more so because it's a caring role and you're more nurturing to that. And I think it kind of got on my nerves because it's like I don't like it. I don't want to do it. So I think definitely opening that conversation so they can actually talk with the women in their lives about more than just what they think, but what those women are interested in, what they would like to do as well. I think it's really important.
I think that's a great point of just kind of the support all along the pipeline and really what even just like parents and teachers can do. Like a lot of the people I end up speaking to say that like they were interested in tech for ages, but they were told similar to you or kind of swayed similarly where they're like, I'm not so sure about that, or I don't know. And so it kind of gets these doubts and it ends up being they end up loop backing around to years later when they have finally kind of gotten that encouragement or exposure or done a program like this, things like that, and have given them maybe that confidence to actually pursue really interesting to them. If I'm going to answer this question myself, I think this is something that I end up talking a lot with my manager about, and it's something I'm pretty involved with at Microsoft. And so some of the things that I end up doing is, honestly, if I see something happening that I don't think is right, or I think there can be a learning opportunity here, I will probably bring it up at least to my manager so that he is very aware. Like a lot of these people, they have best intentions. They don't mean to do things that are harmful or discriminatory or any of these things. They just honestly, some of these people just have no idea about these different things that we pay attention to, or some of our experiences. Becky, do you mind muting your mic? I think there's some. Thank you. But so I think one of the things I end up doing, and like I mentioned Invisible Women before, so that book I ended up actually recommending to like my corporate vice president because I thought it was good data that this guy could read and not deny. And it was a really good exposure across so many different areas. And what was really nice is he ended up reading this book, loving it, and suggested it to all of the other people, all of the other leads in his org. And I was like, this is great. And then also with my manager, it's like speaking to him about these things and just giving him that exposure, recommending him the books that talk about these things, they can consume it on their own time, giving them the exposure to the things that we go through, I think just helps them identify these things themselves, step up when they need to, like you've mentioned, Apoorva, to help their children, like you've mentioned, Becky, all of these things, and be able to kind of actually feed into systems like the Stemettes that they're doing and be able to start actually giving back and understanding the kind of impact that they're making. I think the last thing I would say on this, I'm going on a spiel now, but is the fact that a lot of guys do really want to get involved. They just have zero idea of how to get involved. So if you have opportunities or know of things that like different volunteering or different like whatever mentorship, if someone needs to be connected, honestly, a lot of the time they will just say yes or want to get involved because again, they want to make a difference. They just don't necessarily know how or feel very comfortable coming into a space that's all women. So I think it's kind of helping them learn, helping them get involved, and eventually, hopefully, they'll just kind of take on this active allyship like they were doing with you, Apoorva. We have another question, and I think this is another really great question. Maybe this one, I think we're running out of time, so this might be our last question. So was there any huge reveals about yourself during your mentorships? Any life lessons learned? Shall we go through everybody again and kind of end up? We might have to be a bit quick. We'll do like 1 minute responses from each of you. Let's start with Becky and go around this way again.
I think something that I revealed about myself during the internship was definitely I don't like medicine. I think learning what I do like, what I don't like, and how I could kind of create my own path to a career in STEM and not have to follow like routes that other people have gone through or ways other people have done it. So I think it was definitely building my confidence and directing me in the path that I would like to go on.
That's great. Ayushi?
I learned that if I'm bold, I can get to where I want to quicker. So instead of shying away, just go for it, because there is a support system there and there are people cheering you on, even though you may not see it. So yeah, you're supported, loved. So just go for it.
That's great. I love it. Apoorva?
I would say taking it one day at a time. Not having my life figured out is not necessarily a bad thing or a wrong thing.
Yeah, wow, that's a really good piece of advice. God, your mentor is great. I feel like I need to have her as well. Sanjana?
Probably that, I guess, ability is not everything, and that networking and contacts can get you really far and probably open up opportunities which never were open in the first place.
Another incredible piece of advice. Yes, +1 to that. And Aquia?
I would say don't underestimate your passion. You don't know what doors it could open for you. So be proactive in pursuing your passion is what I took away.
Yeah, wow. You guys are so insightful. I feel like you guys should sign up to be mentors. My goodness, I'm impressed. Right, so I think that's all we have time for. We freaking nailed it right on the dot. So I basically just want to say a massive thank you to each of you for being here today and sharing your experiences with all of us. It's been super interesting for me to learn, and we can see that like people have also really enjoyed it from what's been said in the comments. Another thank you as well to Deutsche Bank for supporting the Stemettes program after all these years. And to be sure to check out and join the Stemettes Society if you want to apply to the Students to Stemettes program. And also take a look at the Stemettes zine, because it has so much awesome information on there. I think that's great. I also read it. I'm part of the Stemettes Society. I think this might be my last. I'm turning 25 soon. Shh, don't tell them. So I might get kicked off soon. But I've certainly found it really amazing to have this kind of peer-to-peer network of just like-minded women. I think it's really great. We have a question. When will we be able to apply for the mentoring program? Is it open now? Let me wait until I hear back from.
Hey.
Yeah, there we go.
Coming and help with this. Thank you, Holly. So I'm going to keep you on tenterhooks just a little bit longer before we reveal applications have opened. So Holly's got the feedback link in here, and I want to back up Holly and what folks have said in the comments. I've been listening here in the background, kind of clapping at certain bits and nodding and almost crying at one point. So a big thank you to our panelists. And as Holly said, I can't wait for you all to come back as mentors. I know there was a question there, kind of, if you're nearly in the industry, can you mentor? And it's like, no, these folks, as soon as you started, I'm watching out for all of you. I've got my eyes on who was on this panel. I'm ready for you to come back. Holly's already done her time. The rest of you need to do your time. So we've got the feedback link here at the bottom of the screen, and I know the team are going to be popping it into the chat feed as well on the platforms that we're streaming to. So please let us know. This is the first time we've done a session like this. We want to be able to do more. We want to be able to make them even better, although it's tough act to follow than it was this evening. So please do pop your feedback in the link. And so thank you very much to Holly. There we go. Awesome for sharing that there as well. So we've got it twice, and it is case sensitive. So where you see a capital letter, please type a capital letter, and where you see lowercase, please type lowercase. So please leave some feedback and let us know how you found that. In terms of mentoring, so applications are now open. It's like on the kind of TV show when you open voting. So we've got 6 cohorts happening this year. It's bigger, like I said at the top, it's bigger, it's even better. We've kind of learned about the virtual delivery, and so we're making it even better and even more tuned this year. So please do apply. Being a member of Stemettes Society means that you have your application. We already kind of know quite a lot about you anyways if you're a member of Stemette Society. So I definitely am recommending that you sign up for Stemette Society so that you can get to kind of see other folks and get this nice warm feeling that you have from just hearing these folks. You kind of just get it logging into the app. It's one of my favorite parts of my day is logging into the app and seeing things, and it takes everything in me to not like and double tap on everything that I see in the Stemettes Society, because it's like this all day, every day. Although this panel's got me thinking, should we have a podcast? Because I could have listened to that all day. I don't know about you all, but yeah, just to kind of the bombs, the knowledge, the gold dust that you're all dropping. So yeah, joining Stemettes Society is as close as you can get to having this feeling all day, every day. So please do make sure you've left some feedback, you've joined the Stemettes Society. And if you head to I hope I'm saying the right thing now, Yaz, but if you head to the Stemette, Students of Stemette website, you should see all the links for sign up, or at least, yeah, if you join Stemettes Society, it's basically the best place to be able to access all of it. Get help with your application as well. And that's where we'll keep you up to date as we open up our new cohorts, because we're going to kind of drip feed them throughout the year just to make sure that everyone can get a place. And it's virtual, so it means it's open to a wider group of people than it has been previously. So the previous cohorts were based in London, Birmingham and Glasgow, and now it's wider. So if you don't live in one of those areas, then you can apply even if you are beyond our British Isles, our sunny shores. So I think that's it. As Holly said, I'd like to give a big thank you to Deutsche Bank, who've made all of this possible over the last couple of years, have funded the trips and the mentoring, paid for the coffees when we could do that before pandemic, and all the support, and made sure we've been able to keep people safe. We're excited to have you join us as a mentor, as a mentee. And remember, share this with a friend, tell someone else about this. The more the merrier. You can all be peers on the program. You can join this community of alumni. And as I think you heard from some of the responses, this is a peer network. These are people that they don't just disappear after the program. You're there to help others get jobs. You're there to support others, build each other up, remind people, when you have the tough times, like we heard from a Porfa there as well, they will come, and you've heard it already and you're ready to go and you know what to do to kind of work through it. So I've spoken now over our final time. I think we've got a final slide that just says thank you for tuning in. So big thank you to all of you. Thank you very much. Enjoy the rest of your evening and we'll see you later. # Corona will not stop us.